Ladies and gentlemen, Hebrews and Shebrews, welcome to the Life Podcast, where we help you, Torah observant believers, thrive as peculiar people in a modern world. And today we're doing that by talking to and picking the brain of Gabrielle Falks. She's a biblical nutritionist who's going to walk us through this maze of modern toxicity in which we live, and she's going to help us figure out how to remove toxins from our lives just by opting out of certain things, not consuming them, not eating them, avoiding them, and also how to then rid ourselves of those toxins and how to replace the toxic stuff with good, natural, healthy things. She's going to talk to us about food, fabrics, heavy metals, cleaning products, mold, parasites, root canals. She's going to talk to us about all of the possible ways, or many of the possible ways, that we can ingest toxins and how to avoid it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you love what we're doing here. Consider checking out our Patreon, because every month we have a meeting of the minds where we talk about the Torah, and it has been quite intriguing every single time. It keeps me up late on these evenings it's the last Thursday of every month that we all meet. So check that out if you're interested in meeting up and talking, or if you're just interested in supporting the podcast. Gabrielle, welcome to the Life Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, man, we just before we started recording are already talking about health and food and what we don't want to eat or do want to eat.
Right.
I wonder if you can introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we then start picking your brain about how we need to eat and live.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Gabrielle, I'm 33, and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner that also specializes with hair tissue mineral analysis testing. So that's something that I offer my clients. I have a practice, Ruach Wellness, and I've had that for about 3 years now. And the great thing about that is I'm able to operate and help 100% virtually. So I've helped a lot of people here in the US, but I've worked with clients from Canada, Mexico, Finland, New Zealand, Israel. So it's pretty amazing, like, you know, the training and the education that I have, how I'm able to apply that even to people that like aren't very local to me. So
it is amazing.
Definitely talking about food education, and then all of this through like a biblical perspective. Like, this is definitely my life's passion. And a lot of that comes from my own personal experience and my own life and my own testimony, and, you know, what I've been brought through and, you know, continuing to delve through as well.
Well, tell us about your life, maybe a little bit. Tell us about your testimony, maybe. If you will. How did you get here today? Why are you a believer?
Well,
I mean,
and with your health too, because it sounds like that's part of it.
Sure. What's your story?
Okay, so I was not raised in a religious household at all. Like, not even individuals that like go to church, like, you know, on Easter or Christmas, literally nothing. But I was raised in a household that had like a lot of love and good structure. It wasn't until I was 16 years old, I went through a very traumatic experience that left one of my friends being murdered and then me being alive because of that. Yes, very traumatic. And that is something I do share a little bit more, like, from my platform a little bit. Haven't really delved into that, and it's just because it's a very heavy topic. But through that experience, I ended up accepting Yeshua into my heart. You know, I knew him as Jesus Christ at the time. And then that kind of worked through, you know, a decade-long relationship with him until around 25 years old. So back in like 2016, I'm married. My husband and I, my brother-in-law kept asking us if we watched a video. And we were like, no, no. He kept following up with us for about 5 months or so. And it was the Way documentary. And
Way.
finally, one night, it was literally like 3 days before Halloween that year. My husband and I, we sat down on the couch and we watched it. And we were kind of just left in awe of realizing, how much we didn't realize and, how much that we, just accepted that as truth. Which, I would say that for the longest time, like Yahweh prepped our hearts to receive that truth. Because in 2012 was when my husband and I really started awakening to, maybe like how our government operates and
You were getting red pilled or whatever you want to say.
Back in 2012, yes.
Okay.
We took the red pill back in 2012, if you want to say that. And that led me to, realizing like our food industry, like there's a lot of corruption there. There's a lot of corruption in like science, like medical research and scientific, stuff that's pushed forward by like our government and, like 3-letter agencies, and just realizing, how deep pockets go and that certain studies are funded by certain corporations so that they look better or that it's pushed more on the American people, especially nutrition wise. And then you see like all of the blatant disease and it's just all of these things. Like God definitely prepped our hearts through like understanding and learning that. And then when it got to, the Bible, we were like, well, of course, like this is the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle of what we know and like what we've learned. Like why wouldn't this makes perfect sense to us? To realize like we really haven't been reading the word for ourselves, like beginning to end and seeing like the full picture. Because when you go to church, it's, you're getting fed certain, scriptures without the full context. And, you feel like you're in a very trusting environment already. So you're going in with your guards down.
You took the biblical red pill. I'm sorry. I had to say it. That's so fun. Okay, cool. Whoa. Okay, after you watch the movie, I'm curious just because, we made it. So I'm curious, like, did you think during it, like, this is maybe wrong and this, or this is weird or whatever, or what did your husband think and you? And
No,
when you left?
we both sat there and just like fully accepted it. Like,
Whoa! That's crazy.
Everything made sense. Like everything came together because, we kind of had those red pill moments prior to understanding the way in which our world works, the way in which, the US was even like set up and funded, just literally all of that. And so, we were over here thinking like, oh, we know so much more than everyone around us, at the time. And then it's like that came into like our understanding and we're like, whoa. Of course, like there would be deception or corruption like within like the church or like religious organizations. And that was something that like we had semi-questioned, which is why we had stopped going to like a traditional church at the time. Like we had stopped for about 2 or 3 years by the time that, this had come into our understanding. So it was very much something we just immediately accepted and knew that we were being presented with truth.
Wow. Praise Yah. Man, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so then did you already start your journey into nutrition and trying to fight, I guess, against the corporatization of medicine or whatever you want to say? I mean,
yeah, it kind of all happened like together. By the time, that information came into our lives as watching the Way documentary, I had already kind of gone down like the rabbit hole of like understanding, like modernization of like food production and everything that kind of goes into that, like where that started, how we think when we go to a grocery store, we have a lot of choice, but really almost everything that you see on shelves is owned by the same few companies, and it's all the same ingredients. It's hyper palatable. Like they have full scientific panels and teams and researchers that put these types of flavors and things in food that make you just enough addicted to keep reaching for more and more and more, so that they can sell you more and more and more. And then the detrimental effects that has on our health and our society, and kind of the downplay. So it was probably around like 2014 whenever I started delving into researching like nutrition and like food and vaccines and those sorts of things on my own, just from the struggle that I kind of like had with my health journey. And during like 2014, 2015, I went paleo, and that cleared up a lot of my own personal health issues that I was going through at the time. Ended up developing like some autoimmune conditions and things in my 20s, like around 2018, 2019. But yes, I definitely kind of went through all of that transition into researching, just through some personal other issues with myself. Like I realized I didn't really trust westernized medicine, because every time I went to the doctor, I'd explain, hey, I am dealing with X, Y, and Z. And I would just kind of be like gaslit, or like, oh, that's just normal, or like, let's just put you on birth control. And I'm like, well, my issue, that I'm dealing with, like, has nothing to do with, like, although I had reproductive issues like endometriosis and Hashimoto's and some things going on, I'm like, that's not what I'm here for. And like, you're not really listening. So that really pushed me into just like becoming my own like best researcher. I'd already known all of this information. So I was like, well, if I'm really going to get the help that I want and that I need, like I'm going to have to like basically take that into my own hands. And that's kind of how all of that started, which led me to realizing like in 2018 that like, I wanted to help people like navigate this, because at that point, I had spent almost a decade with, chronic health issues that, in your 20s, in your mid 20s, I felt like I was 60 years old. Like I shouldn't be feeling that way. And I was left with a lot of, not answers from westernized medicine. So it pushed me into becoming like what I am today, and realizing, hey, I went through all of this, and I'd like to shorten other people's journeys of not having to go through, all this like researching and finding, and just, feeling like no one's listening to you, that sort of thing. So
can you talk about any of the details of your own personal experience, like health details? You don't have to get into all, the nitty gritty, but you could, because maybe some people are going through the same thing.
A lot of my health issues started around like becoming a woman. I had endometriosis from the get-go, which a lot of people don't quite understand what endometriosis is. It's like your endometrial lining shedding, but it's like it can build up like on other organs outside of the uterus. So it's very painful. So the pain of endometriosis has been ranked alongside like getting shot by a gun. Or childbirth. So if you could imagine going through that every single month of your cycle, that type of pain. So I had that like from the get-go.
My sister, I think, had some lighter version of this. But go on.
There's different stages, and they say, oh, it can really only be diagnosed if you have surgery. Like there is no cure for it. There's a lot of hopelessness. From westernized medicine understanding. So I had dealt with that. And then around when I was 17 years old, I had dealt with kind of like some precancerous uterine cells, like some precancerous cells around that time. And then so I had to have surgery for that. And then I was vaccine injured at the age of 18 by a secondary polio vaccine and a typhoid shot. I thought I was going to go into missions, and so I went and got extra shots That way I could travel abroad, and it entirely messed up and rearranged my entire gut. Although I didn't quite know what was going on or the cause of it at that time, if that makes sense, only looking back. So that really changed a lot of things for me. And I was only about 19, 20 years old when that occurred. And then I got a root canal when I was 21. And if you know anything about root canals, there's a great documentary called Root Cause. You can find it on YouTube, but it goes into depth about like the dental industry and how like root canals are like taxidermy in the mouth. So they're removing the root or like the nerves, but then they're packing back in and then placing, you know, a crown or a cap. So when you remove those nerves, you can't feel anything anymore in that area. And what happens is like a cesspool of toxins ends up building up in that jaw because there's no blood flow anymore because they've removed the tooth, like which provides oxygen. So you have, you know, basically it's like an open wound in your mouth that you can't feel that directly is leaching because all of your like your lymphatic system like runs all through here, and then really major areas run straight into your brain.
All of these words, cesspool and leaching and packing, it's also
Holy moly.
it's also wonderful.
Man.
It's so what? Oh my gosh.
I have so many questions.
What'd you do? Okay, keep going.
Okay,
So okay, so then I know it's like a lot. So then I didn't realize that at the time, but at 21 I had gotten the root canal. And by the time I was 23, 24, I was already experiencing major issues like with like insomnia, depression, kind of like paranoia, couldn't sleep, anxiety, stress, just all of these major issues going on, and then all of the gut issues too from being like vaccine injured. I was gluten intolerant but didn't realize it. So for years, you know, I'm having all these gastrointestinal pains and issues, not realizing it was stemming from what I was eating, not realizing, you know, I thought I was eating clean just because I wasn't eating fast food, but really, you know, like all the products, you know, on the shelves, they're full of chemicals. And I didn't realize, you know, I was constantly damaging, you know, my temple and my organs and all of these things. And so my health just very quickly deteriorated around 24, 25 years old. And didn't realize, you know, how bad it had pushed me until I was around 28 when I finally did find a functional medicine doctor that would test me. And she was like, hey, like you have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of your thyroid. And she was like, and you have leaky gut, and you have like candida and parasites and mold. And so it was just like this laundry list of, it felt great to finally realize what was going on with me. You know, mold exposure from, you know, several different areas. I had also been bit by a tick on the back of my head as a young girl at 8 years old, and that had exposed me to like Lyme and like Babesia and some other bacterial that I didn't know that I had. And those things, they can lie dormant. You know, I didn't have like a bullseye rash, which is typically something that people talk about with Lyme disease. I didn't have any of that, but I did get very severely sick as a little girl. But those things can lie dormant within a person for years. A decade, until you go through stressful period that triggers that to turn on. And then, you know, and then you have like your genetic profile and makeup. So all of us have, you know, a different tolerance to stress, chemicals, you know, the experiences, like the trauma that we go through just living life as a human, right? So we each have kind of like a breaking point. So each of these things that were occurring to me, like in my late teens and then early 20s, they kind of just piled up within someone like me, and like my body was just breaking and snapping, and I didn't really trust doctors anymore. So, I was, not seeking out westernized medicine and not fully knowing what was occurring until I found someone that would like actually listen to me. And that was until I was 28. So you kind of go through all of that. And I will say some of that too, because I know we'll talk about that later. Some of the things that I was exposed to and that, were harming my body did come from sin. I think people just think of sin as like a spiritual thing, but sin has very physical ramifications against your temple. So that all kind of it was just like a layering effect, like a domino effect, right? And one of the biggest pieces to this puzzle was my mindset. For a while, I had viewed God as like a militant type father. So like, oh, you did X, Y, and Z, so now I'm punishing you with X, Y, and Z. Does that make sense? And that is a really warped place to live your life and to be in. I was in quite literal fear of him and like basically abiding by him because I was in so much fear of messing up. Although I had repented and changed and, pulled myself out of different things, I still in my mind would go back to it and kind of like just was constantly punishing myself internally. Like, oh, well, you're not really worthy of health. Like, you're not really worthy of, love or these things because, of what you did when you were younger. And that's not, it's like I was able to forgive everybody else and understood that God forgave me, but I never forgave myself. And that was one of my biggest lessons and one of my biggest proponents to, where I am now, especially with the education that I provide through my business and how I work with clients. Because all of this stems back to, emotional regulation, which stems back to your nervous system health. And this is the root. Like these are like the true roots. Everything else is kind of like the branches. And then your symptoms become like the fruit.
Wow, man. They say now your picture of God is sort of based on your father and your relationship with your father. Not to like get in like too much into your life. Not that even is to do with your father.
My view on God really changed after I like accepted Torah. Right? So like you're going through the Torah and you're like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to live. Like this is like how I can like overcome sin and those things. But you see how you instantly see like the ramifications, right, of like Israel's decisions. And there were like a few teachers that we were listening to at the time on YouTube as part of like church, right? On Sabbath, like we would listen to certain people talk and, talk about the Torah. And I would say, there were obviously we kind of like got into the wrong messaging when it comes to understanding what like being Torah observant even is. And that is kind of like where that viewpoint of him came into my life. And it wasn't until around 2020 I was actually reading. I wish I would have looked up the verse before this. Maybe you can add it to the notes. But there is like a verse to where Paul is talking. And it completely caught me off guard with what he said. And I said, what is actually going on here? And I remember looking it up because there was a little footnote in my Bible. I think it might be somewhere in Hebrews, but I can give you the exact verse later. But basically, he's talking about like psychosomatic illness, which is when people can feel. So Paul is writing this, and this is what he's referring to, like even back then. So people can feel very physical symptoms, but it's coming from their mind. And so in 2020, like, reading through the Torah portions and the cycles and all of that, I had come across that, and God was like, here you go, Gabby. Like, what you think is coming from me is not coming from me. You are the one that is kind of like bringing this upon yourself through your own mindset. And then like you're ascribing it to me, saying like, I'm doing this to you, but I'm not doing this to you. I love you. Like, I'm your father. I want the very best for you. Why would I hurt my child? Type. And so through that, it kind of really broke that off of me. But I would say like within the last, so 2020, 4 years ago, I would say though within the last year, it really come like full circle of me like really understanding and getting to like the very inner depths of me as a person and understanding why I would have these thought patterns or why I would think that way. And yeah, and then it kind of all made sense. And then I've really done a lot of work unraveling all of that and not being in that mindset frame, or viewing myself, in an unworthy manner, because the word constantly talks about, as a man thinketh, so he is. It talks about, reining in your emotions, like not to be ruled by your emotions. It's okay to have these emotions, but you should not be making these decisions from these emotions, right? We see a lot of that like in Proverbs and Psalms, and just understanding like if, even just going back to, the commandments, like, love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love yourself, like, how are you going to love anybody else how you're supposed to? And so a lot of it came back to me just like not loving myself and having that unforgiveness. And so I was spinning like tales in my head of like, well, God's doing this to me or this or that. And he wasn't. It was really me holding myself back in those ways. So.
Wow. I have one more, baby, and then you can jump. She has all these questions written down. But I think to try and round out your story, basically, you're already telling us how you started to find a cure for this view of God. How did you begin to find the cures for all the ills that this nutritionist listed for you, or this like naturopath in 2018 or whenever you were 28?
I mean, that's really been a long journey and a long process. Some of that has come through the education and, me going through school to become an NTP. But I would say that, there are fundamentals, like, our Heavenly Father created us to live a certain way, right? We're in a modern time, but so I'd say that kind of like removes us from being able to live like how he truly intended us. Not that it's impossible, but it kind of removes us, right? Like we're more inside. We're not really outside. There's less farmers, we're not as much in nature and getting fresh air. We're not waking up with the sun and going to sleep when the sun sets, because we have blue light, we have artificial lights, where we stay up much later. We have more stressful corporate, like modernized type jobs than what we did. We're not really connecting with the earth and like stewardship that he gave us, like to have like over the land. So when we live in ways that are not cyclical towards like the patterns in nature that, he literally laid out and created like in the beginning, at the foundations of creating everything, that sets us up for, disease and other things to come in. So, which we can kind of like get more into that later, I guess, just depending on what questions that you have. But so I would say definitely through learning some of these things, you can support the whole host, and your body, he innately designed us to be able to heal, to self-generate through him. Because we are by his design. And so when you start living according to that design, the body instantly knows what to do. And sometimes that takes tools, right? Sometimes we need like herbs and, other things that can like help. And that's kind of, where I come in on a bio individual basis to help with clients. Like, oh, well, your body is really needing, this nutrition or X, Y, and Z right now. Like we can get that from these whole foods, but we also might need to help you supplement a little. So we do have tools here to like help us live more like in congruent ways, but it's really just all about getting back to like the basics of like, managing your sleep, your nutrition, like whole foods as close to, God's original design of that food that we can, without like messing with it with, pesticides, herbicides, that sort of thing. And, waking and sleeping and, following the patterns like that the seasons present us, in the summer, springtime, it's really warm. We should, the sun's out later, like we're up longer. We're able to do things in the springtime. We're able to renew and kind of clean out, spring cleaning, like clean out from the fall and the winter when we like retreat and like we're within and, we're eating more stews and more nourishing, type foods, and that sort of thing. There's really a lot there.
Wait, you're saying, because this is incredible and very interesting.
That same thing. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No.
You haven't said enough.
I have the exact same question. So you mean that when you operate your life aligned with day and night and seasons and the cycles, perhaps even Shabbat, that you will be in better health? Is that what you're saying? Like we shouldn't just ignore the fact that it's getting dark outside and like turn on our lights and stay on until 4 a.m.
Correct.
And even food-wise, you're talking about even the sorts of foods that you eat during different seasons of the year almost.
Right. Because because he established that, right? Not like every food or fruit and vegetables in season year round. Like, and it's all by his design, right? He gives us those like more like potatoes, squashes, people are more likely want to eat like root vegetables in the winter, right? Because you're putting those carrots and those beets and turnips and all those things that are like naturally like coming to like full fruit during that time. And that's naturally kind of like what you go like, oh, I could go for like a good stew or soup and, bone broth and this whole sort of thing. And then in the summer, like we're provided, or spring, summer, we're provided with those very like watery fruits like melons, watermelon, juicy, sort of like apples and fruits because they're very hydrating because the sun's out. You're probably outside a bit more, or it should be. It's hotter typically, and those foods like they provide us with the minerals and nutrients that we need to keep going. And not only did he do that, but he gave us different foods and fruits like in every region of the earth that come forth in their time and provide us with different nutrients that we need in those different seasons.
Wow.
That's amazing. So we eat so differently than this, though, because with our big globalized food industry, they're like shipping us the strawberries from wherever they're ripe, and we just have them all the time. And also sometimes they don't taste very good because maybe it's the wrong season or whatever. But
Exactly.
do you think that we shouldn't do that? We shouldn't just like be eating all these, I don't know, because sometimes there's a health trend and everyone's encouraging you to eat something that only grows in like Guatemala. And you're like, but that's not even here. Like I have to have that for optimal health. Do you think that we're supposed to eat more like what's around and what's in season?
100%. Yes. And I think when people start doing that, they'll see better benefits and greater shifts within their health, especially if it's local, because it's coming from like the ground source that's like around you. And not only that, but you're providing financially for your community that's around you, right? Because you're going to those local farmers or those individuals that are growing or providing, and you're supplying them with monetary gain so that they can continue doing what they're doing. We definitely live in that modernization to where, yeah, we can go into a grocery store and like you said, I can buy a pineapple any time of the year. Does that mean that that pineapple is ripe and like at its like prime nutrition? No. And the body, the temple, right? Because we are the temple now, can kind of suffer from that. And I think that people don't quite realize that.
When you were studying the food industry and like kind of your eyes were getting open to what was going on, what were some of the things that you learned that surprised you about what's happening to food in grocery stores?
I would say that one of the biggest surprises is, understanding these companies. I don't really want to name them because I don't want the podcast to be flagged or anything. But understanding that in World War II, it was very much like a chemical warfare type of war. Okay, when the war went away, those major companies that were creating all of the chemicals for chemical weaponized war, they didn't just go away. They created other products and took it to farmers and said, hey, if you use these, your crops will, not, be devoured by bugs. They will grow twice as fast. You can cut out money in production and this and that. So I think that's like one of the major things that, and definitely a big, huge shift occurred in like public health here in America was during that time, because it just led to soil depletion and it led to, modernized farming, which is with chemicals. And, Yahweh gave us like this earth to steward and to tend to. And if we're not having like biblical stewardship over farmland and farm animals, we are definitely meddling with his creation in a way that is not beneficial to the earth in which he gave us to have dominion over or for ourselves. So that was a pretty big shocker. And then realizing that, modern, like these food corporations, they don't have our best interest at heart. Their number one priority is profit. And any way that they can cheapen ingredients, lessen ingredients, put chemicals back in it so they don't taste funny or weird or gross, or get us addicted to having to constantly reach for that particular snack, food, whatever, they're going to do that. They will 100% do that. They will bend data. They will withhold data. They will, create their own scientific literature to be like, no, this is good. Like, we're okay. You can trust us.
So in this same vein, what would you say to the person whose shopping cart you look into and it's like Cheez-Its and it is, I don't know why Cheez-Its came to mind, but it's Pop-Tart, it's all of these man-made food items. What would you say to them about what they're consuming and or the companies making these things?
Like, how much poison is too much poison for you? If you think of like a grocery store in your mind, think of typically the food that is like on the outside of the grocery store. You typically have like your deli and your cheese and eggs and dairy and your meat products, right? Because they're in refrigerators that like outline the grocery store. And then you have like your fruits and vegetables. I would say this is typically where you're going to find real food, and everything that's in the middle of the store is just going to be a variation of mimicking real food.
And if this person whose shopping cart you've leaned into has never heard any of this stuff before, and they're like, well, what are you talking about? How is this possible? Like, this is in the food pyramid. It's all part of what I'm supposed to be eating here. What would you say to them?
I would probably come from like a place of like compassion and understanding. Like, yeah, like I was right where you were. And by an early age, I was digging myself an early grave. because I wasn't going to last much longer on that type of food, because it's not food, it's just filler. It's just filler food. It's void of nutrients. And if you continue to, select items like that that are void of nutrients, like you're only damaging your temple, right? Like we're told that our temple, like we should live a life to where our temples are a living sacrifice. So if something like innately is designed and it goes against your temple, then that's kind of like, whether knowingly or unknowingly, you're damaging, this beautiful thing that, like, our Heavenly Father has loaned us for a period of time. So do you want that period of time to be, filled with like symptoms and not feeling well and medical bills and cut short? Or do you want to be able to kind of like reach a higher potential and have a greater impact because you feel better, you can move better, you can be a better, father, wife, whatever, provider in any sort of way, and, live a life that's much more meaningful to where you feel better longer. Because, I was definitely on the other train and it didn't feel good. I felt horrible. I didn't feel like a 25, 26, 28-year old. It made me in a way like not the best spouse because you don't feel good. You're cranky. You don't have energy. So like, how can you, go out and like I don't mean like perform, but like how can you go out and like be your best, like to your spouse, your household, and your community and glorify God if you're not having stewardship over the temple that He's loaned you? And I don't say any of this like to be like, oh, you have to be like, 100% and like that's the only way you can, glorify our Heavenly Father. We live in modern times. Like I'm not 100%, but at least I'm educated and I'm aware. So I'm open. Like when I make a choice, like I know the choice that I'm making. I know the decisions and how that's going to impact me. If you don't know, then there is no choice to make. Does that make sense? Okay.
Do you think, well, she has something. Go ahead, baby. Go ahead.
Going back to the grocery store, can you give us a couple rules? Okay, so you already said shop around the perimeter because that's where actual food probably is, right? Is there anything else like people should keep like 2 or 3 things in their head, like this is what is allowed in my cart and this is what I'm not even bringing home? If you had to give people some guidelines.
When I'm working with a client, at the end of the day, I'm like, you're going to decide to do whatever it is that you're going to decide to do. I can give you an education, but at the very end, it's your choice. And, all I can do is provide you with this education and hope that, you make better choices. They don't have to be perfect choices. You don't have to, completely stop eating your favorite food item, but like, let's look for a much more natural, organic version of that item. So that's what I like to tell a lot of my clients. I also, I'm like, let's look up and see like what's in season in your local area. Let's try to, within your shopping cart, maybe grab like one new fruit or vegetable to try to incorporate that week. That way you're getting a wide range of different nutrients, because if you're sticking to the same regular typical items, you're not getting a wider range of nutrients, which is where, nutrient depletion and other issues can kind of like inset because the body's not getting exactly what it needs. So I would definitely say try something new if you can. Like try to branch out a little bit with your taste buds there, and then maybe trying to find a better alternative to your favorite snack items.
And how do you know if it's better? Not to interrupt, sorry, but so let's say it's some like packaged cookie or whatever. It's an Oreo or something like that. And there's 87 ingredients. Like, what am I looking for to upgrade this?
So I would be looking for, like, when you're reading the back of a package, like being able to understand the ingredients that you're reading, first and foremost. Second, I would definitely avoid all industrialized oils. So like canola oil, safflower oil, uh, vegetable oils, even sunflower oil. These are all highly oxidizing oils. They're known as PUFAs, or polyunsaturated fatty acids. And PUFAs are very unstable and cause damage to like your DNA and your cell structure. Because they're unstable in high heat and light. And what is the human body but, you know, warm, 98 degrees. And also, we are a conductor of like sunlight. The sunlight hits your skin and that causes like a reaction. So then you're creating vitamin D, like we absorb light. So I would say to stay away from industrialized seed oils, that they damage your gut. They're going to damage your DNA. They lead to a lot of health concerns. So if you could do anything, I would say avoid those oils in your products. And then, being able to read the back of the label and understand what's actually going on there. Not the front of the label, because marketing is very great to get you to think that, this product, like, this is so good. And they typically use like the color green somewhere on there, and they're like natural, but nowhere, nowhere is it saying like organic or like real food. So I would definitely try to get savvy on reading those labels, especially the front, and understanding like the certifications that, like the stamps that are put on the packaging and like what those actually mean.
Man,
That's great.
I have a rabbit hole question, but maybe we shouldn't go with it.
Okay. Well, I have a more general.
You go ahead.
Can I ask more general? Okay. You mentioned before when you talked about your own health history, all these different factors that were affecting your body, from like mold to bacteria to all these exposures. And then you go into nutrition, like as your specialty. Why did you choose to focus on nutrition? Because there are a lot of factors, I guess, that are influencing our health.
At the base of nutrition and supplying the body, the temple, with nutrients, your body cannot function without those nutrients. So if you're not able to break down, there's that phrase, you are what you eat. Well, you are what you can absorb. So if your gut is entirely inflamed and messed up, you're not absorbing your food. Your body is in a constant state of trying to maintain homeostasis, which is basically like harmony and balance within, right? There's thousands of cellular functions that occur every single day that we don't have to think about, right? Like breathing and eating not eating, but thinking, digesting our food, creating hormones. If you don't have the basic blocks to be able to carry out those functions, your body, because it's trying to maintain that harmony, that homeostasis, will borrow from other areas. So it will shortchange. So then, whenever that's gone on chronically, that's whenever these symptoms begin to set in. These, like bloating, gas, acid reflux. It can be, disturbances in sleep, frequent urination. Literally, like entire list of symptoms start occurring. The branches of a lot of that have. So, sorry, let me back up. Nutrition and nutrients is a way to nurture the temple, to bring a sort of safety feeling. It is just like one aspect of like totally shifting your health. So what I personally do, I'm not just someone that is only focused on nutrition. I'm also focused on like your lifestyle habits. How late are we staying up? How much sleep are you actually getting? Are you waking up during that sleep? What are the pans that you cook on? Do you have a water filter in your home? Do you have a day of full rest? Sabbath, that you actually rest. How many hours are you working? Like, tell me, like, what happened in your childhood? Did you feel safe growing up? all of these things combined is what I particularly look at with a person. It's how I was trained. Nutrition definitely is a large part of it, because we have to get those nutrients going and flowing so your body can calm down and feel safe.
But you do a comprehensive examination of their life, basically. And
Yes.
and it's based on biblical principles.
Yes.
That's very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, oh my gosh. All right. Go ahead.
there.
You go next. I'll skip the rabbit hole.
Okay.
Oh man. Okay.
But I do have the rabbit hole.
I mean, you can ask.
No,
you don't have to put
Katie,
it in.
I know.
If you just want to know for yourself.
I'm so curious. Go ahead, give it.
Earlier in your story, also you talked about like going to doctors who maybe were dismissive of things, and I suspect, but you would know because you are working with people. Do a lot of people walk around with things they think are normal, like, oh, I'm just getting older. Oh, everyone's period hurts, like that are not normal? How common is this?
Everyone. I have not had a client that, wasn't suffering through something that they just kind of in their mind decided this is just going to be my life for the rest of my life. Like everyone, like fertility issues, thyroid issues, metabolic type issues, I see a lot with like gut disturbances, a lot of pain in that area, just a lot of depression, anxiety, people that just like, I don't feel like myself anymore, or one day I just woke up and, I had all these aches and pains and they just silently suffer through it. And they just think like, this is just me. This is just part of aging. And I'm just like, this is not, how our Heavenly Father intended for us to age. We're facing a lot of things in our environment that our ancestors didn't have to deal with. Did they have to deal with, other issues like maybe like some famine and, maybe more like war? I don't know, I'm like, yeah, probably. But I would say compared to like what we face on a daily basis just within our environment is 100 times worse than what they were facing throughout probably most of their lifetime.
Can you talk about some of these environmental toxins? Because we've talked about the list of wild ingredients in Oreos and other things.
Right.
All right. Some people might be like, oh, that makes sense. I can't pronounce those things. They must not be food-based or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes to the rest of their life, what are we dealing with here in modern America, at least?
So
or at least give us a couple of it. I know you probably won't be able to walk through.
So I would say like the main threat of like these environmental toxins coming in is going to be mostly through like the products that you use, like personal care products, makeup, hair care products, lotions, like perfumes, colognes, right? This is where a lot of these chemicals come in, that are going directly on your body. Your skin is, your largest organ. It's one of the largest detoxifying organs that we have. And it absorbs much quicker, kind of like taking things directly into your bloodstream. So this is where a lot of these environmental toxins come in, your laundry detergent, candles, air fresheners, those home cleaning products. This is where this is the bulk of the exposure that's going on for us as like modern humans. This is where these things are coming in. So if you can, slowly like, realize this and slowly like convert different products, as well as like your water supply, then you'll be living a much more, less toxic life, to where you're not coming into as much, exposure with these products, with these toxins.
And the danger of these toxins, perfumes, chemicals, things like that, is that what will they do to you?
I mean, we're talking like cancer, infertility. Infertility is huge in the US right now. like I think there was like a study that was just recently done on like male sperm, and they found that like 55% of the males that they studied had registered glyphosate in their sperm. Glyphosate is like a huge um uh yeah, Roundup. It's Roundup, yes. And that's used on all of our products. Well, on all of our like most of our food products, I will say. And it's been just kind of like soaking into our soil and air supply, water supply, because that stuff has to, wash off. It goes somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. It's in our environment. We have things like that. And then we have, plastic. Plastic's a big one because it's another endocrine disruptor. Endocrine meaning like hormone disruption. So people that, have a lot of hormone issues, women like PCOS, endometriosis, painful periods, all of, uh, cancers, different type of cancers that occur in those regions, for male or female, those are all, can come, like we can trace those back to like plastic exposures, these chemical exposures, even like from the food, like the pans that we cook on, like non-stick. This is something that was, created by DuPont and was known to cause severe, like cancerous issues or birth defects. That's something that's known as PFAS, PFAS, which are known as forever chemicals. These do not go away in the human body or in the environment. So think of non-stick, like the PFAS have been found in clothing, like lots of like workout clothing, yoga pants, that sort of thing, boxers, underwear, socks, bras. So these areas that are very vital, we're just sweating and soaking them in. And I know, I'm telling you, this rabbit hole, it's a whole thing. But honestly, you're like, how is this possible? Like, why is this going on? We, like, there's the deceiver of the world, right? So if he can keep you from physically being fruitful and feeling your best, if he can keep your mind from feeling like you are worthy and capable and able, and that you have a heavenly Father that actually loves you and cares about you, he's gonna, right? He's gonna want you to play on your emotions. He's gonna want you to be that keyboard warrior. He's gonna, want he's gonna want your entire temple affected so that you cannot do what you have been called to do.
Oh my gosh. You talked about plastics. Have you looked into clothing like polyester and rayon? Can you talk to us about synthetic clothing?
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics. It really is, because it's so intertwined with the Bible as well too. Like I have a whole thread on my page that goes into clothing. So God, like our Heavenly Father, there's lots of scripture that talks about linen, wool, and I'm sure you guys probably have heard of this, maybe not, but there was a Jewish doctor, Dr. Heidi Yellen, that was like, okay, I'm going to study fabric. And she studied fabric with frequency, right? When I say frequency, a lot of people tend to think like, oh, new age, like the vibes, this and that. And I'm just like, no, like a lot of people in new age talk about that. But, if you think of like the fingerprint of God, how he spoke everything into existence, like that is a frequency. So everything has a resonating frequency, like your glass cup, plants, these headphones, they all have a registered frequency because it's something that's physical, and it's going to have a frequency fingerprint. So she studied like the frequency of fabrics, and she figured out that like a healthy human body, someone in good health, is like our frequency is like 70 to like 90 hertz. And then when she studied fabrics, like cotton registered maybe around like 40 to 50, organic cotton was around like 80 to 90, and then wool and linen were at 5,000 hertz. So the term like life-giving linen, that sort of thing, linen is talked a lot about in the Bible. It was used like on the Levitical priests, so was wool. They were both used on the tabernacle in the desert, all of these things, right? But then when she studied like silk was probably, I think it was around like a 10. And then all of these other synthetics, such as nylon, polyester, like you mentioned. I'm trying to think of like the others because there's so many.
Rayon is one.
Rayon, yes, all of those, they had like a very negative frequency or no frequency, which when you're wearing that, like it impacts the body. So if you're wearing linen and like wool or wool clothing, it raises the frequency of your body, which is good because it's quite literally giving us life. So with these synthetic clothing, that like polyester is just plastic. Think of try to envision the process that plastic probably has to undergo in order to become a fabric. Like, I can't even fathom that. I'm sure there's videos online that explain it, but we're talking heavy chemicals. We're talking like petrochemicals, like petroleum. So you're basically just vibing and wearing petroleum all day long and sweating in that. And that's gonna have an impact on our bodies, right? And it's just like, this is not conducive towards our health. This is causing major impacts. People, dermatitis, like I've had people tell me like, oh yeah, like when I switched over to, just cotton and linen and stuff, like my eczema cleared, or, I realized I feel less anxious. Like I had a client that was more anxious and stressed out. And she realized it was when she was wearing more synthetic clothing. And like all of these things. But this is definitely like a favorite topic of mine, because then again, this comes into like fast fashion, chemicals. Like people have tested synthetic clothing and they found like high levels of heavy metals like lead, arsenic, these sorts of things. So you just think all of that just like sitting on your skin all day long for a lifetime. It's a big impact. And God, whenever, our Heavenly Father provided us with all of these good, beneficial things that we can make clothing from. And I just want to preface all of this with just saying, like, if all of this talk stirs up fear within you, like, I just want you to kind of like take a step back and look at this from a different perspective, as like, if I can become more equipped with education and knowledge, then I can do something about this. And that you don't have to make decisions like based out of fear. Are all the clothes in my closet, are they all cotton and linen and wool? No, they're not. Do I do my best? Yes, I do. I would say, the most important things are going to be like your underwear and your socks, because those are always typically on your body. So like you can start in small increments, that sort of thing.
Wow, that's important. This is an important subject that most people aren't talking about.
Yeah.
I think.
I've only heard people talk from an environmental standpoint, because when you wash that synthetic stuff, all the microplastics go into all the fish or whatever. Like it's ending up in the water supply, but not as many like you're saying from the health standpoint of how you had a client who actually just felt less anxious in natural fibers. It's just crazy. Mm-hmm. So you had a post on Instagram that like caught my eye, because it was a list of 5 things, and you said so many diseases are caused by these 5 things. We already started talking about one of them, I guess, with like the toxins. I think that was on the list. What are some of those other things that are causing most people's health problems? And then later on, maybe we can get into like how you can combat those things.
Yeah, I know the post you're talking about. I made that post very early on in my career. I would say though that today, like it still holds up. What I would go on to say is that those 5 things are like branches off of like our nervous system and our emotion, right? This innate ability that like, our Heavenly Father like programmed us with. So I would say like the real root and the real impact is your nervous system, but those are like 5 main branches that impact and affect the nervous system the most abundantly in a negative way, which then like the fruit of all of that is like those symptoms, disease, all of that. So I do want to preface that with like now, more understanding and knowledge base that I have now. And also that all of those affect us because of something called like epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of how like our environment impacts our physiology as humans, and that we understand now that 90% of health outcomes occur from our environment. So what you wear, the clothing that you wear, the chemicals that you're exposed to, if you were exposed to mold, if somehow were exposed to like Lyme disease and those other bacteria, right, that we're talking about that I mentioned in that post. So, how much sun exposure we get, like how sedentary we are, do we move enough, the stress, emotions, trauma, all of that, 90% contributes to our health outcomes, whereas 10% comes from genetic makeup. So our environment impacts us the most. So kind of just prefacing that, like with kind of talking about this.
I didn't see the post, so I'm wondering, what are those 5 things?
So those 5 things that I had mentioned were heavy metals, toxins, chronic stress, or trauma, like emotion, right? Known and unknown sin, and then bacteria, parasites, mold. Because all those are 3 separate. They very much kind of like coincide and like convalesce together within the body. So those are like the 5 things that she's like mentioning. So those are kind of like the 5 main branches, whereas like that all, in my opinion, now stems and impacts the nervous system the most. So kind of just like I will say this. So the root, like I've said, of a person's health issues come from the nervous system. Those are the branches: the heavy metals, environmental toxins, stress, trauma, emotions, known and unknown sin, and then the bacteria, parasites, and mold. Those are the heaviest impact. Our health will follow the health of our nervous system. So if those are impacting the nervous system, then the body is going to follow the rest. And a lot of that plays into effect like from our brain and our thought patterns as well too. So we've kind of talked about like heavy metals kind of a little bit, but that comes through a lot of food sourcing. That like, non-organic foods, it can come through using like tin foil when you cook. It can come from vaccines, tap water, dental, like the metal fillings that just kind of continuously leach into your mouth. Having, I
have those.
I know. Most people do. It comes through pharmaceuticals, cigarettes, tobacco.
What about deodorant?
Deodorant, yeah, the aluminum that, is pretty widespread in a lot of deodorant, fabric softeners, synthetic clothings, even tampons and pads, which is very unfortunate. Even organic tampons and pads for women, because a study was just shown about that. So those heavy metals, they're going to cause like metabolic dysfunction, cognitive decline, kidney, thyroid, liver issues, fertility struggles, locomotion dysfunction, energy loss. They particularly like to embed into certain organs within the body, which causes all of these issues. So your best defense, like against stuff like that, is to, try to go for like less toxic products that you're going to use on your body, that sort of thing. And, more organic, natural, local produce, getting dental work addressed. If you have those metal fillings, getting those addressed, as well. And, doing, picking, cleaner, like cooking pans to to cook off of, and, opting for more like natural based clothing and not like fast fashion clothing pieces for heavy metals.
So that's what people need to do basically to get to start to exit the toxic pool.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, and then we've kind of talked about like the environmental toxins. I would definitely say stress, trauma, and emotions are going to be one of another big factor that I talked about in that post. Uh, you know, not having undealt with like emotions, especially like the word talks about bitter roots. Those bitter roots within a person, that can look like unforgiveness. It can look like bitterness towards a person or a situation. It can look like anger that's not processed out of the body. There's nothing wrong with having heavy, darker emotions. It's the issue with not dealing with those in a healthy way to where they're just stored within the body because those get stored within organs. So having unprocessed trauma or emotions, you can do all these things that I'm talking about, like eating better, better quality clothing, addressing your water supply, all of that. But if you're not addressing your mindset and these emotions that could be embedded in there, then it's basically like everything that you're doing is like filling up a cup of water that has a hole in the bottom. Because emotions and stress and undealt with trauma is going to drain you and deplete you of more nutrients and cause more deficiencies within than anything else. And some of this looks like being a people pleaser. Some of this looks like, because people take certain scriptures out of context to where, they just allow people to walk all over them because, I have to deny myself or I have to, turn the other cheek. All of these different scriptures that people don't quite realize what was actually going on politically and like within the culture in which these in which Yeshua was like giving reference to and talking about these things. So if you're not dealing with like that emotion, you'll always kind of be in like a loop. You'll get a little bit better, but then you'll plateau. You might get a little bit better, but then you'll decline. Because we have to get to like the crux and the root of like our identity too, right? I talked earlier about struggling a lot with my identity with God, and that led to a lot of my health outcomes that I didn't want. That impacted my health in a huge way, more than I'd like to admit. And it wasn't until I actually started like dealing and like moving with those through nervous system, like biblically based health practices and like reframing my identity like in our Heavenly Father, that I was able to kind of overcome. And I've seen a lot of like fruitful things like come out of me, and much more creative. I'm much more outgoing. I know, as being a 33-year-old, like I know myself. I didn't know myself before. I was looking at myself at 31 and 32, like, who are you? Like, what do you like? Like, I had not met the real me because I had, been conditioned to be a people pleaser my whole life. I had taken, which I didn't mention this before, and it's okay if I talk about it without going into detail, but I had, sexual abuse as a child. So, I took on the shame of my abuser, oh, this is our secret. You can't tell anyone. And so I lived with that, with covering that person's shame. So shame, and that takes us back to like the Bible, in Genesis 2, when Adam and Eve eat the fruit of the forbidden knowledge, it was out of shame that they covered themselves because they realized their nakedness. And shame causes you to turn away from God because you're like, oh no, like I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough to be in your presence. Like I've been bad. When really all he wants is for us to turn to him, to bring that to him. Like King David, he was very angry. Job was very angry, and they brought their anger to God. And them being perfect was not what made them righteous. Them bringing everything to God and repenting was what made them righteous. Like he can handle those heavy emotions. And that's something that I didn't realize for a really long time until recently. Like I can bring this to him, and I don't have to like assume other people's shame, or, you know, like it's not like all my fault. Like other people have a responsibility as well too, right? To you, how you act, that sort of thing. Not everyone's as self-aware. But the more that you become, you can decide how you're going to react in certain situations, right? Which comes back to like biblical teaching, that, you know, there's like that one particular verse that comes in my mind to where, you know, it says like, you can be angry, but do not sin in that anger. So it's just like all of those things. I know it's like a lot, and there's a lot that I've kind of presented here, but it's because we are multifaceted. It's never just one thing, especially when it comes to health. And if, you know, I talk only about nutrition, all these outward things, and I'm impacts on the body, but don't talk about like the spiritual health, and, you know, reining in those emotions and some deep inset wounds that people carry around. Like this is like the true roots. These are the bitter roots that God wants you to get out, so that you're not operating from these places of like fear or shame or unworthiness, and resentment is a really big one as well too. So.
Oh man. What are some ways that somebody might know they have an unresolved emotional problem? What if they think they feel mostly okay, but they're not sure? Like maybe something happened, they don't know if they're over it or not. Like are there signs that maybe there's something that you should address emotionally, like when you're working with people?
A lot of it comes down to like behavior, like now, right? So you can kind of realize like if there's things that are undealt with, due to like how you react and you respond now. You know, what triggers you, um, what, you know, or like maybe you're snapping, right? Like you're snapping at your partner or your children, and you're just like, oh, like where does that come from? Like why? Like that is not me. Like I don't do that. But like why am I doing that? Or, you know, why am I having like a short fuse? Or why do I, you know, binge watch shows when I know that I should do laundry and cook or whatever? Like, why can't I stop scrolling on Instagram? Why, like, why can't I put my book down? Like, why am I constantly reading, especially like fantasy novels? Because these are all different ways that like we escape, that we, numb ourselves out, that we over respond in situations, because these are and it all stems from childhood. It all stems from, you know, like literally conception to about 7 years of age, like how you were raised, if you were neglected, if your emotional needs were met, or maybe you weren't allowed to have big emotions. You know, maybe you were taught like you're a child, so you had to be silent until you're spoken to. Maybe your parents had an idea that, you know, money is evil, or, you know, maybe, you know, your dad had a temper, and so, you know, you wanted to hide like when he came home, right? You just didn't really want to be seen because you didn't want to be in the crossfire of him yelling at you or something. You know, all of these different things, like they create like behaviors that we don't realize that we carry into like teenage adulthood. And not that it all stems from like the 0 to 7, but that's like the prime time of when we're developing, like our nervous system is developing, and we're developing how we're going to respond, problem solve, deal with emotions, all of that. And then it comes from, you know, your adolescence, and seeing like how your household or even your community, like within the church or organizations that you grew up going to, definitely the modern American school system as well too. We don't have to get into all of that, but, you know, like here's your gold star for sitting there quietly, you know, blah blah blah, like, you know, all of these different things, they programmed us. And so if now you're in adulthood and you're just like, why if I go out like one time for an hour with friends, do I feel like I have to like socially like be a recluse for a week to recover? You know, there's all these memes about millennials, you know, like, oh, we don't answer the door anymore. Like, why are you calling me when all we used to do is call people straight away? But like now we can't answer the phone. Now, you know, like, oh, I can't deal with this. Or maybe, you know, you have an argument and your partner or you, like, you're emotionally avoidant, like you shut off and you're just quiet. You're solemn, you're somber, all of those so you're asking me like, how would somebody know having these behaviors? And, you know, kind of having some self-awareness of like, oh, this is not how we're supposed to deal with it. This is not how I'm supposed to feel. This is, you know, like we're not supposed to be stuck in these like autopilot modes, or, you know, someone always, you know, kind of jumping with a short fuse, but they might apologize. Or it can be the opposite. It can be like a workaholic. It can be someone who can never calm down. Someone that's always doing, and you feel guilty if you're sitting down, or you're sitting down trying to relax, but your partner walks in the room, and so you stand up and you start cleaning or doing something because you feel like you have to. So, and it's not because of them. You just start doing, and you're like, oh, I can't get caught like resting.
I think I've had that exact thought. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh,
So here comes the therapy session. I'm gonna have to journal after this for a long time, I think.
Oh my god.
So you can use the journal prompts from my nervous system.
Hey,
guide.
that's great. I just downloaded it this morning. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
All of those literally stem from like nervous system regulation, like what I'm talking about, like those emotions, the trauma, how you were raised, the ideologies that you just adopted, right? You know, speaking on like Torah observant, like unless you were kind of like raised in that, you had to come to like a realization that information in the Bible was like being withheld, or like, you know, like a revelation, like, you know, God pulling the scales off your eyes. It's the same thing like with our emotions and like our trauma. You know, and trauma isn't like, it doesn't have to be like this huge event that happened. It can be smaller instances that occurred over a long period of time, right? So it doesn't have to be this huge dramatic thing. It can be like a consistent thing that happens little by little over the course of, you know, your entire adolescence till you moved out of your parents' home or whatever it is. That sort of thing. So, and trauma isn't necessarily like I mean, it is what happened, but it's like the wound that your body, that your temple carries from what occurred. And that is how you manipulate your own behavior to feel safe. Because, you know, our brain, our nervous system, our number one priority of that is survival, is safety. So you're constantly scanning your environment, like, am I safe in this moment, or is there a threat? And the brain, the mind doesn't understand, you know, the threat of, you know, a wild bear versus, you know, the threat of, you know, having like all the, you know, different emotions and different aspects in that sort of way. So the brain sees everything as like the same, or, you know, like trying to like being stressed from meeting like work expectations and deadlines.
That's so good. So did we work through the things so you're saying the nervous system is like the root that you're seeing is affecting people's health. Branching off of that are all these different things that are contributing to nervous system dysregulation. So you talked about the toxins, the heavy metals, the like sin, emotions, and the trauma and that sort of thing.
Right. And nutrition, right? If nutrition impacts your nervous system, because your nervous system, it guides like your brain growth and development, sensation, sleep, healing, like wound healing, rehabilitation, your hormones, aging, body temperature, hunger, thirst, puberty, reproductive health, fertility. Like your nervous system is literally like the basis of like how God designed us. It is our perception. It's all of your five senses. All of that is controlled by your nervous system.
What about parasites and mold and that section? How would someone even realize that they have mold exposure or that they have parasites in them? Like, what do you, are there symptoms of this? Are there signs?
Yes, there's a lot of signs and symptoms. Um, when it comes to parasites, I'm always like, do you have a pulse?
Well, yeah.
Basically, everyone
Okay.
has them. Is that what you're
Everyone
saying?
has a
Oh, it's
parasite.
such a creepy thought.
It's such a creepy thought. To what extent, what kind they are, we don't know unless we do testing, right? But if you're living, breathing, like to some extent, you have parasites. What I do want to say is, like, our Heavenly Father, again, He designed our bodies to be able to annihilate, take care, destroy, and dispel parasites. But if you have all of this like emotional stress, trauma going on, you're nutrient depleted because you're not eating like more whole foods, and you're getting all of these chemicals in, from your products and maybe your clothing and your water supply, right? All in your lifestyle. You're not sleeping because you're staying up too late, this and that, right? All of that is going to weaken your immune system, like which the nervous system controls, right? It's dampening that response. So when these invaders come in, mostly through the food, through soil, gardening, like natural things, the food that we eat, unclean food, is a really big proponent of parasites, like pork, shellfish, clams, huge proponent of parasites. Beef, yes, undercooked beef, that sort of thing as well too. But we see a lot of it come through, or I see the connection with unclean foods, unclean animals, right? That we have been like, oh, this is food, but it was never intended to be food.
These are how parasites are absorbed, you're saying. And
Yes, how they come in. So all of those other things weaken your natural defenses. And so then you're eating and you have low stomach acid because you have high stress and like your blood sugar regulations everywhere. And so that stomach acid is not disinfecting your food. So then these parasites, they come in and they don't just stay in your digestive tract, they migrate all over your body. They have, depending on what they are, they like different areas. Your uterus, like if you have fibroids, PCOS, like women, yes, in your uterus.
that's horrible. I thought you were going to say hatch. I was waiting for you to say hatch. Are these
Hatch?
things hatch?
No, yes, yes,
Oh.
yes. They have full life cycles. They're having babies inside of you.
Oh, goodness.
That's another one of those gross words. Like, but yeah, keep going.
I know. I have a friend and she calls them, oh, it's so gross. She calls them nests.
Oh,
Ugh, I
that's
know.
rough.
They love your liver, gallbladder, those issues, those areas in your body. So they migrate and they cause havoc. I mean, insomnia, brain fog, anxiety, stress, digestive upset, IBS, colitis, ulcers, uh, your uterine fibroids. They can lead to cancer. There are some doctors that they've come out, ones that do like autopsies, and they're like, in every single patient that had cancer, they also had parasites. Um,
So they can
so
affect
it
your mental health, even your mental state. You were talking about brain fog. Like if you're just
mhm,
not crisp and clear like maybe you used
mhm.
to be, or if you
Memory
can't
loss,
sleep,
yes,
that could be
cognitive
parasites.
decline. So this is why I say kind of like everything that we've talked about, like those are like five branches, like, right? Those are like the five like main components, because if you've listed a lot of the symptoms that I label off, which there's hundreds more, it's just, what I'm able to recall right now, but they all kind of like overlap, right? Like you hear me saying like the same things like over and over. Yeah, because it's all of these things kind of like combined, and this is like what they branch out and what they cause within us. The same with like mold. There's like mold illness, right? Kind of even like adulthood, like ADHD, having issues with focusing. I have had clients, that have had mold exposure. Mold exposure, people think like, oh, I'm walking into like a condemned building. and like I can see mold everywhere. Really, like mold exposure can happen like from a brand new home build, because there's leaks. It happens, whenever like there's cracks in your tile in your shower, and maybe you need to re-grout, or um, there's holes and stuff in there, or you had a pipe burst, or there's like a slow leak behind the wall, like of the toilet, that you didn't realize was occurring. So mold, it hides very well. And there is a thing called mold illness, and it's pretty big and prevalent. But I've even had clients, even just mild exposures, like I was saying, they tend to have, like I've seen within them, have like ADHD type symptoms. Like, oh, I can't focus really anymore. Like, I do a task, and then I think, oh, I need to do this. And then I go and do that task, and they're not really completing anything. And I'll be like, oh, have you ever been exposed to mold? Like, did you ever live in mold? Or a really easy tell sign, if you're living in it, do you feel better when you are outside of your home? You're more clear-headed, you have more energy, you can sleep better, you're going to the bathroom less, especially at night, less frequent urination at night. You're just a happier person, you're not depressed. And then when you come into your house, you have like anxiety or stress, or you feel like there's this doom, like this gloomy like cloud over you in your home. Or even like with one client that I'm working with now, when she is outside of her home on like extended, like a week vacations or traveling, she loses weight. She loses weight very quickly. And then when she's in her home, she puffs up like inflammation all over. Like achy joints, that sort of thing, like arthritic type feeling in your joints. So a lot of that is mold as well too. And then bacteria, meaning getting bit by ticks or other insects, even ants, can carry certain bacteria and diseases. And again, like I said in the beginning, these things can lie dormant. Or maybe you have a high tolerance, but eventually you're going to break and you're going to snap. Right? Like the temple, the body can only like handle so much before it's just, it's just done. And it can't quite maintain that homeostasis, that harmony, that balance within that we're intended to have.
Wow. It's wild how so many of these are connected directly to the Bible. Like mold, we're warned of mold. The clothing, we're warned of like mixed fabric, and it seems like
food, certainly, yeah.
Food.
Even with the mold, like there's all of that. Like within the Torah, like when they're talking to like the Levitical priest, and they're like, and then you go into the home, like you seal up the home for 7 days, and then if you see it, then you got to burn it. Like I don't know if everyone believes this, but I tend to believe this. I mean, he's talking about mold. And, even with like the leprosy, I know that there are like some like rabbinical scholars that refer to mold, and they link it with like gossip and like a loose tongue because of what happened to Moshe's sister, Miriam, when she, was speaking like against Moses, and then like God struck her, like with leprosy. So I have come across some articles, and like, papers written by like some rabbinical sources that link mold to like a loose tongue or gossiping, and, condemning somebody in an unbiblical manner.
So with mold, you just have to fix the root of the problem. You have to get away from the mold or remediate the mold, right?
Yeah, you would want to like remediate the mold. Some people just have to entirely move. Sometimes that's not feasible, so they remediate or they spend time outside. Like I've had some people that have like lived in a tent in their backyard while like slept and tried to spend as much time as they could outside while their home was being remediated. Sometimes, you know, because mold insets into like fabrics. So sometimes, you know, that they had to get rid of clothing or like furniture, rugs, pillows, kind of switch everything out. That way it, you know, there was not a chance of it kind of like reconjuring up in any sort of way. But there are products out there. There are easy ways, kind of affordable ways that you can test your home to see if there is mold present. There are like mold remediation companies. There are companies like I am partnered with a mold company. You can find them on my website. In my like resources tab, but they have like mold cleaning products. So they have like laundry detergent, they have like sprays, you know, to where you can clean, because a lot of people typically use like bleach and stuff, and that just kind of exacerbates mold spores. It actually proliferates mold spores. So there are better ways that you can kind of like combat those things, and just like maintenance. You know, I use these products not because I have mold in my house, but because, you know, I'm mopping or, you know, I'm cleaning my bathroom, like, you know, my tub and my tiles, and I just clean, you know, like once a week, once every other week, to try to just like help maintain, you know, the health of my home.
Is that a big deal? Is home like environment quite important? For example, is dust dangerous for us? Should we get rid of dust? I don't know. I'm curious about that.
I mean, mold can settle within dust. Yes.
Oh,
Now, like you don't like you don't have to take everything to an extreme. Some people do. But if you know, live in fear of your the fear, that emotional state is going to do so much more damage to you than, you know, having a little bit of dust here and there and, you know, that sort of thing. Like you don't want, like, you know, our Heavenly Father doesn't want us to make decisions based out of fear. So just remember that, and you can't avoid it all, right? Like I'm pretty sure Paul talks about, like, if you wanted to avoid all the corruption in the world, you would have to leave the world. So I'm not quite ready to leave, but
you must go.
So, okay, I have a question.
Wait, hold on. Okay. Parasites. How do you get rid of them?
Sure.
How do you get rid of parasites? And then
yes,
her question.
So with parasites, there is an order, right? You want to, a lot of parasite cleansing is like, it's so big online. I feel like everyone's talking about parasite cleansing and, oh, we should do it, and they do look very demonic. Like when you look at them, I'm like, this can't be natural. Like this is a weapon from the enemy. I don't know. But so there are proper steps, and I would advise everyone that you should probably seek counsel from a professional like myself or somebody else that you trust. You can do it on your own, but you would want to make sure that your detox pathways are open first. So what I mean by that is, you know, that you're eliminating, you're going to the bathroom every single day, you're getting good, restful, restorative sleep, because that's how the body restores itself, through sleep. And that's also how it flushes toxins. You would want to make sure you're supporting your liver, maybe with like castor oil packs and other herbs like dandelion root and all of these beautiful things that God gave us. And, you know, you would want to make sure you're hydrating well and you're getting in good minerals through your food and your water supply. So you want like a good foundation first, is what I'm trying to say. Because if you just try to go into attack mode while your body is already kind of like on the fritz and you have all these other symptoms going on, then what will happen is, as you're trying to kill these parasites, they eat on heavy metals. They eat, like, candida is typically with them, and so is like mold. So what can happen is, as they start dying, they know that they're dying, and they release a lot of like toxic like ammonia, and they start like laying more eggs and trying to reproduce more, and they will release toxins into your body. So if your detox pathways are not naturally open and flowing well, like your lymphatic system, your lymph, and all of this other stuff, then those toxins will just like move to a different area, right? They will get stored somewhere else within your body. And that can cause obviously other symptoms that you didn't have prior. So there's an order and a step and a function to get rid of them. There's lots of good like herbal parasite cleanses and stuff on the market that, you know, some of them I've used personally that have helped when I have done some parasite cleansing. You can do things like coffee enemas to kind of help open you up if you're brave enough to do that. So there are lots of different tools and things that you can use, but you want a good foundation first, and then there are good herbs, you know, that God has given us that we can go and to extract and like remove parasites, which you'll get some mold and a little bit of heavy metals out as well too. But you never just want to go straight for the thing. You want to strengthen your own temple first and foremost.
And shoot, I know you have a question, but I may have one more.
That's fine.
We haven't talked about physical activity, the lymph system, and exercise. How important is this? Is this ranking up there somewhere? Sweating? I don't know. Is that? It's good.
It is. So movement is definitely one of those other pillars, along with nutrition, emotional regulation, nervous system health, right? Avoiding toxins. Like movement is another pillar to overall health and well-being. We were quite literally designed to move, right? We were designed to run, jump, play, all of these things, hunt, gather, all of that, build, create with our hands, right? So movement is a really big piece because, again, like you mentioned with your lymphatic system, there is no pump for your lymph system. You have to move and sweat and get your heart rate up in order for your lymph to move. And your lymph system, you can kind of think of it as like a garbage disposal type waste management system within the body. It's also like the site of your immune system cells, like killer T cells, like in your lymph nodes. So they will meet toxins or bacterium, sometimes parasites, in your lymph areas, and they will, you know, like devour them and like conquer them and that sort of thing. So your lymph system is very important, and we get that through movement and sweating. Sweating is another one. You know, infrared saunas are really beneficial. You don't have to have that. Like, you know, we can go outside and get in enough movement and sweat. I would say the right type of movement though as well too. Some people can overdo it with movement. Some people use movement as like a punishment for how they eat and, you know, that sort of thing, like over exercising. So you want to find like types of movement that are like conducive for you. It can be like walking, bicycling, swimming in fresh bodies of water. This can look like maybe like Pilates and strengthening. This can, you know, jump roping, skipping, playing, jumping on your trampoline, playing hide and seek with your kids. I think some people like take that type of movement like for granted, or, you know, they don't think of that as like, this is beneficial movement. I'm like, no, you'd go play with some 7 and 8 year olds and you'll realize how much you're moving and you're like, I need a break. You know, or maybe it's like basketball or tennis or badminton or what is it? Pickleball.
Pickleball.
There you go.
Yeah.
So maybe it's movement like that, but something that actually brings you joy rather than like you're forcing yourself to move in that way.
You mentioned fresh bodies of water. Do you have a problem with chlorine, with swimming in a chlorinated pool?
Do I swim in chlorinated pools? I do on occasion. But like we've talked about, your skin being like your largest detoxifying organ of your body, and everything that comes into contact with it, it absorbs. You definitely absorb that chlorine, and that chlorine can get into your bloodstream and other areas, and it's a chemical. It is a chemical that we don't really need to be coming in contact with. When I say like, you know, fresh bodies of water, it's because it's living, moving, breathing water. So it's structuralized. And although things have changed in our environment, there still are good like minerals and things within the water, especially like salt water, seawater, that our body is going to absorb and benefit from. Also, it's just like connecting with that movement of nature. So like, God, like what God has given us, being out in nature is really calming, like for the nervous system, emotional regulation. So if you're swimming in natural, like, lakes, rivers, it's one of the best things, the sea, it's one of the best things that you can do, to be in natural bodies of water.
Water is, all right, in some locations, many locations in this country add fluoride to water, to drinking water. Is that okay? Fluoride is just good too? I mean, that's nice. It's good for your teeth.
I I think they would like to tell us, like us to believe that it's good for us. But fluoride can cause health issues as well too, especially cognitive, health decline as well. So you would want to avoid fluorinated water. They do say it's good for our teeth. Like we have it and the Brits don't. Like look at their teeth. I'm not kidding. I've heard dentists say that. But it's like it is a neurotoxin. We do know that it's a neurotoxin. So you would, you don't have to, if you can't afford a big like filtration system for your home, there are really reputable like shower and bath filters and like handheld water pitchers and, standalone like, counter gravity systems that do like cycle out that fluoride for us.
And can we just depend that our local municipality is putting fluoride in, or is there a way you can look this up?
Yeah, so you can actually go to EWG, environmentalworkinggroup.org / I think it's water testing. I do have like a link for it on my Instagram page. Like I did a post on how you can search. But you can actually type in America, you can type in your zip code and it will bring up, do it if you're brave, because it will bring up all contaminants and to what degree. Like, so there are things in my area to where they're like 432 times the legal amount that they should be. And it will also tell you, like what this causes. Like, so like, here's the toxin, this is how much over the legal limit that it is. And then like, it will tell you like, can cause cancer, this, that, whatever.
I have to plug EWG too because they have that skin deep database, and they do the same thing with beauty products and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like typing in the makeups and stuff that I had, and I was like, and it breaks down all the ingredients and it gives it a score rating from like this will kill you to you could eat this, right? And then because at one point I wanted to like change all my makeup over to stuff that was more non-toxic. Because that's, like you're saying, every single day. It's just going.
Yeah, when it's a little bit because people are like, oh, it's just a little bit. But every single day, a little bit from multiple sources, that's the issue. Right. It adds up here and there. I mean, like, we just in our modern times, like, we're going to come into contact with it, like. When I'm out and about, I don't really fret about that. Or like when I'm traveling, there are some things that I bring, but I don't try to avoid all of it, because it's just kind of impossible. And I don't want to live in a place of, fear or.
That relates to the question I was going to ask, because there was a time where I was listening to a lot of health podcasts, like to do with our one son or whatever, and different issues he was having. And I had to just stop. It can get really overwhelming when you learn a lot, because yes, you are empowered to do something now, but it also can feel like, well, where do I even start? Yeah. And then you're also saying that it's important to be in a peaceful, like grounded mental state, because if you're super healthy and frantic, that's probably not good for you either. How do you balance
the knowledge and the emotional state?
Yeah, and like what you can implement, because you can't do everything at once, I suppose.
You can't. And that's so true. So I think it's going to come down to like an individual level and then like a family level, right? So, having those talks like within your family of like, okay, this is where we believe like we're being impacted the most, right? And then kind of like making decisions in that sort of way. So for my husband and I, that looks like starting with like food sourcing. We, stopped eating out as much and, buying like all the snacks, and allocated that money towards, buying more organic or even like frozen organic, and, buying, half a cow from a local farmer, that uses biblical husbandry principles that, we align with. Like, we know the animals are treated well. We know how they're fed. We know what's being used for them, like when they get sick and that sort of thing. So that looks like, our food. And then slowly I transitioned our products. We would run out of something and then I would find a better replacement. So it wasn't like an overhaul, at once. And then I think after we did products in our home, the other main thing was water. I was like, we have to get, a filter. So that was a little bit of an investment, but, we stopped buying bottled water for several, months, and that afforded us to be able to get some good water, or, like a small water filtration system. There are ones that are even much more like affordable, like $50 to $60 that families can use, like water pitchers that do filter fluoride and heavy metals and other things. So those sometimes are like what I recommend families at first, because I'm like, hey, let's just get you something, right? And like, a shower filter. And then you can save up and get something, that is going to cost you like several hundreds of dollars or something. So definitely think it comes down to like where you feel like you and your family are being impacted the most. And then you can kind of make decisions to overhaul slowly from that point. So then after we did that, then we kind of did like underwear and socks for our clothing, because those are always on our body. And then we changed out sheets slowly, like organic cotton sheets or linen sheets, because you're spending a third of your life sleeping. So like, let's make that a little less toxic. And then I think after we did that, then we got like an air purifier for our home, brought in more plants. Plants are very underrated for purifying the air in your home. So just little things like that, over years, is kind of like what we did. And something that, I advise my clients to do if they're not already, right? Like I just hand them, some good resourcing and list of these things.
And by baby stepping, you were able to
baby.
like not get emotionally overloaded where you were like,
and I think if you are getting to a point, kind of like what you said, to where you feel emotionally overloaded, it's time to take a step back, and you just start with one or two things. You start with what you feel like you can accept and where you feel like you can, okay, this is not overwhelming to me. And then as you work through that and maybe, do some nervous system regulation to expand, you can bring in more. But a lot of the times it's, what you don't bring in anymore, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's not about like adding more and more. It's about saying no. It's about, just, watching what comes into your home from that point forward, type of thing.
Say no to parasites and hatching and cesspools.
I just want to underscore
Okay,
that.
sorry.
That was helpful. That was helpful. I'm just saying it again so everybody hears this. So you were saying in your home, you guys did food and water and products first, because that does seem like that's a lot of your day and a lot of your inputs. And then also when something ran out, you would not buy the same thing again. You would buy a slightly better version. And then you have this rolling improvement.
Right. I kind of had like a list, like, did slow research, and it was like, okay, this is what we're going to use for laundry detergent now. And, this is what we'll use for, cleaning our house. And some of this stuff you can even make yourself, like, vinegar sprays, like using white vinegar and like orange and lemon peels and putting those in a jar for a couple weeks. Like, that cleans, like some of this stuff is going back to like what our grandparents used to have to do.
That's what my mom is doing. She's doing that stuff now. And she's doing the whole making her own toothpaste, charcoal thing, all
Laundry
this.
soap, yeah.
The whole...
Yeah, some of it can look like that. That feels overwhelming. There are a lot more companies now that are, out there that, they want to provide good, clean, non-toxic products to individuals. And yeah, they're everywhere. You just kind of have to, look more online or other places. But yeah.
That's cool.
Okay, I have another macro question. How long does it take to heal from this stuff? Let's say you just lived a standard American, like you're eating Hot Pockets and you're spraying on that Axe body spray that all the boys use in middle school or whatever, and you're just doing all the stuff. And you're not moving and then you come to your senses. Like, how resilient is the body? And how long does it take to experience like actual good normal health?
I would say the body's really resilient and responding when you start giving it the tools and the environment that it needs. Everyone's going to be different. It comes down to that individual basis. Like, what was your toxic threshold? What exactly are we dealing with? I would say working with a professional like myself, I'm kind of able to filter through everything for you, right? And I'm able to like paint the picture for my clients and say, this is why you're feeling XYZ. This is where this comes from. This is what we're going to do about it. So a lot of my clients, like within that first 4 weeks, they're already feeling a lot better, but that's because it's very detailed oriented to them. I would say if you're doing it on your own, like I would, think like maybe a good 3 months to start, feeling some different effects, and then maybe 6 months a bit better, and then, a good year. For me, like there were different things that I noticed immediately when I got my root canal removed at 28. Within 3 days, like my insomnia had subsided. And within about 2 weeks, I would say about 80% of my anxiety, stress, paranoia completely gone, lifted. So there were things that I did to where I felt almost like immediate benefits and was like, I'm completely, I'm not suffering with brain fog anymore. Like I can actually have a conversation and retain information now, because I was so bad at that time to where I couldn't talk. I was so forgetful. My husband, like we were having arguments because my husband would be like, I told you. And I'm like, you didn't. Because I would forget. I just could not hold conversations or retain information. So I would say it's depending on what you're doing. That can cause like immediate relief, or you'll feel it over time. But, to remind yourself, even if you don't feel things immediately, that you are, making improvements in a way that is going to impact the longevity of your life. Like, we want those instant results, that instant gratification, like now. Or you want to race to the end super quickly, like just, I'm going to overhaul everything right now. Like I'm throwing it all out. But it's not always like the race and how quickly you get through everything. You're in it for the long haul, right? Like this is a whole lifestyle. This is a whole mental, physical, emotional shift. And that takes time. And to also be graceful and gentle with yourself and recognizing you are becoming somebody that you've never been. And that takes a lot of grace and patience and self-love to go through.
Where can people find you and maybe start working with you?
Yeah. So I have my website, which is Ruach, Ruach, as in, the spirit. So ruachwellness.com. My website, you can read about my story, kind of my approach to health, my philosophy towards health, and then, see my services, what I offer, and then those resources. Like I have water filters, those mold products, some clothing brands that are much more natural. I have some of that listed on my website for individuals to get information from. And then my nervous system guide that you can download for free to kind of help get you started on regulating that nervous system and what impacts that. And there's, biblical affirmations in there and journal prompting. And really easy applicable steps you can take. And then there is my Instagram, which is Ruach_Wellness. And that's where I, communicate with a lot of my audience base. It's where I gather most of my clients from is, they kind of get to know me, trust me. I share a lot of my personal story in depth on there. And, and then of course, all the free education that I can offer. I do that through that platform.
That's so cool. I think Katie has more though.
Yeah. Okay, this is the very beginning. You mentioned that you do hair tissue mineral analysis. Can you just say what that is?
Yeah, so a hair tissue mineral analysis is a biopsy on soft tissue. So people don't realize that like our hair is like a soft tissue, and it actually, is like a branch part of our nervous system. So the body stores like minerals and heavy metals in different areas, and one of that being your hair. So it's a very non-invasive approach to testing your overall like mineral status. Mineral status allows me to be able to see the type of stress that your body has been currently functioning, within the past 8 to 12 weeks, which gives me like a pretty good revelation of what's been going on for a longer extended period of time. So I'm seeing like the history of what's going on within your body within 8 to 12 weeks, whereas like blood analysis kind of shows us like a snapshot of what's going on in that current moment right within the body. So extended analysis with the hair, I'm able to determine like heavy metals. I'm able to determine like stress patterns and your metabolic functioning, so the health of like your thyroid, your adrenal glands, your blood sugar regulation. If maybe you're more prone to a bacterial type of infections, or like low immunity, maybe your kidneys are having a hard time detoxifying, liver health. I can see a lot of that with a hair tissue mineral analysis. So it's just, again, like a non-invasive way of me seeing your body at the cellular level, how things are communicating, or maybe where that communication is getting like jammed up.
The only thing I wanted to know is you had some post about a mineral mocktail, and I was like, my gosh, can you talk are there any of those that you just come to your mind when I mention mineral mocktail? Sorry, I had to ask you about this.
The adrenal mocktail. Yeah, which I do have a whole like ebook on, which has like 10 recipes. So my ebook goes into like depth about how minerals are like one of the most like crux, like foundational points for overall health, as far as like like what you can do in the here and now. Every cellular function, every chemical reaction in the body occurs from minerals. So if you have a mineral depletion, then you have like a metabolic meaning your full body like dysfunction. So that ebook goes into details about that, and it gives these recipes, the adrenal mocktails. So the adrenal mocktail, it's called a cocktail, but I don't like calling it a cocktail because no alcohol in it. So I call it an adrenal mocktail, but essentially what that is, it's a like concoction of like whole food sources of minerals that are going to help directly replenish you and like help lower stress, adrenals, within the body. So like I would say like the original recipe, of an adrenal mocktail is like consists of coconut water, orange juice, and some sea salt. The orange juice is there to provide vitamin C, so that's part of the mineralizations and the help. Coconut water is very high in potassium. You want a potassium source like 6 to 8 ounces, and about like 2 ounces of like the orange juice, 2 to 4 ounces. And then the sea salt is sodium. Sodium and potassium, they work in tandem together at replenishing your minerals within the body. Like when you're sweating and you're moving, you're not just losing water, you're losing your minerals. So you want to remineralize. When you're in higher emotional states of stress, your body's burning through minerals, which is what's leading to depletion. Your immune system is reliant upon minerals. Literally everything is minerals within the human body. So it's a great place. I start with minerals with all of my clients. So there's that. Another one is like, I call it like an orange creamsicle. So it's like 2 to 4 ounces of orange juice. It's 6 to 8 ounces of coconut water. And then you can use whole cream or coconut cream, and you do like 2 tablespoons of that within, and it kind of makes this really yummy like orange creamsicle, like the popsicles, like drink for yourself, with the spritz of sea salt in there. So that's like another popular one. You can use like cherry juice, like you can change up that juice mixture. But yeah, within my ebook, I have like 10 recipes. And then I think I have 2 recipes. I have a watermelon mojito on my Instagram page. So it's just like blended up fresh watermelon, because typically when that's in season, watermelon's high in potassium. So there's your potassium juice. And then some lemon or some lime juice for that vitamin C. And then, just like make it a little fancy, just like that mint for like that mojito. And then I think I did a little bit of sparkling water in there and some sea salt. But it's a great way if you are exercising. It's something delicious to sip on that's going to replenish you while you're exercising, gives you energy, helps that stress response. Or if you're someone that's like sleepier in the afternoons, like that 2 to 4 p.m. period time frame, you can drink this to kind of help boost your energy and again combat that internal stress during that time. It's a really great way to kind of replenish the body with hydration.
Wow.
Ooh.
Gabby, you are a wealth of information.
Thank you.
People better be thankful, and I hope a lot of them reach out to you.
Yes, absolutely.
My door is always open, and I do help a lot of people through like just DMs, just as little bit as I can. I definitely do try to give back. And I have other things in store, for Ruach Wellness that will make it easier, if you're not quite able to afford working one-on-one. I have other resources and things coming out soon that will give individuals the ability to kind of take what I talked about, get like, the main points of that, and then like okay, how do I apply this? Where do I start? So it's kind of like a program that will like help them to differentiate. This is where we need to start. This is what you should focus on, type thing.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out and having me.
Well, yay.